The Bible Treasury. A monthly magazine of papers on scriptural subjects. Volume 19, Article 1, Part 76 of 93, 1892 and 1893. The Early Chapters of Genesis. By William Kelly. Genesis 10 verse 24. The most important line of all Shem's stock, in its remote and even in its approaching consequences, through moral and divine associations, is the briefest in this genealogy, and this must now be noticed. And Arphaxad, Arpachshad, begot Shelah, Shelach, and Shelah begot Eber, verse 24. Arphaxad was Shem's eldest son, born 2 years after the deluge. It is to be observed that the inspiring Spirit led Moses to change his manner at this point, introducing Arphaxad and his family as a sort of fresh start. The same style is adopted also in 1 Chronicles 1, it is no longer as before, and the sons of Dot. As in evil, a new departure was made for Cush and his descendants, so here for good where Arphaxad comes before us. Yet for the present little is said of the latter, unlike Nimrod who shot into immediate prominence, not content to be a mighty hunter before Jehovah, but thereon and after began to be mighty on the earth. Good is of rare occurrence here below and of slow growth, always excepting the one who manifested its perfection, and all the more because he would not be designated by that which he claimed for God alone unless indeed there was faith to see and own God in him. Josephus states in his Antiquity 1, 6 and 4, ed. Hudson 1, 19 and 20, that Arphaxad gave his name to the Chaldeans. But this is erroneous. For the Chaldim, as they are called in Scripture, or Chaldee as they called themselves, were a Cushite race, not Shemitic, and their tongue is said to have closely resembled the Gala or ancient language of the Ethiopians. This appears to have been retained as a learned tongue for erudite and religious purposes, at least, and we may see reference to it in Daniel 1 verse 4, even when the Shemitic type of language had superseded it for ordinary or evil usage as shown in the inscriptions of that region both Assyrian and Babylonian. The predominance of Nabopolassar and of Nebuchadnezzar his son gave the Chaldeans their established supremacy over the various races in Babylon, so that what was an old and special tribe at first got to be the more extensive designation of that conquering people, as well as to mark a peculiar class of learned and scientific religionists, etc., astrologers as we see in Daniel 2 of whom the prophet was constituted chief or master, Daniel 4 verse 9, and 5 verse 11. Nevertheless, it is very possible that Arphaxad may be traced in the name of the region called A1/4 AANI plus or minus II plus or minus IAII superscript 1 I mentioned twice by C. L. Ptolemy, Geographic ed. Wilberg, 387, in his account of Assyria, and in the city A1/4 AANI plus or minus II plus or minus in the list with which that first chapter of Book 6 closes. So Bochet concludes in his Geographic Secret. 2, 4. This region, south of Armenia, was the early home of the Shemites, as afterwards, Ashur prevailed there. But there also the Cushites were strong in early days, and a Japhetic element was not wanting in self-assertion. But the Shemites unlike the others were ever disposed to stay at home, which made the subsequent crossing the more remarkable in the progenitor of the Hebrews at the call of God. Of Salah or Salak little can be said with certainty because the Bible is silent. He was the father of Eber in the direct line of the chosen patriarch Abram, the depositary of promise. The name signifies shoot or extension, but to regard it therefore as fictitious ought to be too absurd for the credulity of rationalism. It is known that a place with a similar name in the north of Mesopotamia occurs in Syrian writings, to which Noble refers in his well-known book. Of Eber, a little more may be said when verse 25 is examined. It is the more necessary to distinguish the true form because in Luke 3 verse 35 it is confounded with the different name of Heber, which is shared by no less than half a dozen persons wholly distinct. The latter reappears in the name of Hebron, the well-known city of Judah, as ancient as Damascus and rather older than Zoan, or Tanis as the Greeks called it, in Egypt. Scripture expressly intimates this, Numbers 13 verse 22.